years go by. Cellophane flowers of yellow and green towering over our heads.
I'd like to introduce to you Dr. Robert Sarvis, and he is in actually our area of educational resources. Are you in the Office of Educational Research and Development? Is that it? Or
Human resources.
Human resources.
Yes, I'm the inhuman side of human resources.
Actually, he's the human side of human resources because he's got strong expertise in psychosocial issues, and he's going to talk about aging women in society right now.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Well, welcome and good morning, one and all. Let me give just a quick overview of kind of where we've come and what's going on and why am I here today? I keep asking myself that question. About a year ago, I finished my doctorate at Texas A&M College Station in Education Human Resource Development, which is the teaching training side of human resources. A part of my doctoral research was looking at a group of 18-year-old freshman students, university, traditional age, at a predominantly Hispanic, female, Catholic university. In doing that research, that put me in touch, because of the demographics of that group, put me in touch with something called andragogy and pedagogy and the teaching learning side of how these young ladies hopefully learn some information in the college classroom. That put me down a little bit further away in dealing with something called the Texas Diversity Council and the Texas Diversity Institute, of which I am now, by fiat, I've been appointed as the Assistant Director of the Texas Diversity Institute. And we've just had our conference, the Texas Diversity Council just had our conference here about a month ago here in San Antonio. Now, when I first got into the issues of diversity and looking at the things considering and concerning diversity and diversity area, I was interested because how it kind of fed back into the research that I had done in my doctoral work, okay? So there are some tie-ins here, and I'm going to hopefully weave a doily, if you will, of some connections. Think how doilies are. I say this to a male audience, they have no clue, but ladies always have a good clue when I'm dealing with doilies here. We're going to take a look essentially at a number of interrelated issues and how all of this, to me, seems relevant and how it all fits together. So this is indeed an update to some of the work that I did last year and some of the things that I've been doing in the years since, and hopefully springboard into what I think are important issues for the future as well. Let's take a quick look. Now, the title of my presentation was Aging Women in Today's Society, and I went ahead and made it Aging and Women, the People. Let's take a look at some names. Now, I'm not sure that everyone here is going to recognize some of these names, but let me just kind of run through some of these names for you and give you some of the highlights. First name on the chart, Mary Baker Eddy. Does anybody know what Mary Baker Eddy is famous for?
She founded Christian Science.
That's correct. She's the discoverer and founder of Christian Science. Sarah Josepha Hale. Does anybody know what Mrs. Hale is famous for? Okay. Well, I had to look this one up too, so don't sweat it. She wrote the first novel, and she did this in 1827, as a matter of fact. I didn't note this, but Mrs. Eddy founded and discovered Christian Science in 1866. The Grimke sisters, anybody know what they're famous for? Didn't know this would be a history lesson, did you? Well, there were two, I knew y'all know this, Sarah and Angelina. They were both very active, very ardent abolitionists, okay? Above and beyond leading the pack. Even in spite of there being some 12, 14 years apart in age, they were inextricably linked to one another throughout their entire lives. Dorothea Dix, anybody know about Mrs. Dix? Well, the key word to remember from Mrs. Dix is mentally ill. Not that she was mentally ill, but Mrs. Dix was born in 1802, but in 1841, sort of as a second career, she visited a local jail and was absolutely appalled at the conditions in the local jail. I mean, appalled. And when she asked the jail keepers, why do you keep these people in such horrific conditions? They said, they're all mentally ill. They don't know the difference. What's the difference? And so she was an active, ardent reformer of the jail conditions of that time. Elizabeth Blackwell, come on, first female medical doctor. First female medical doctor in 1849. She was the first in her class. She ultimately went on to found a number of infirmaries in the New York slums and did some great, great work down there. Remember, this is a time when women did not have status in society. They had no rights. So they're doing some great, great things, okay? Harriet Tubman. Everybody knows about Mrs. Tubman, right? Underground Railroad, that's right. She herself got out of slavery and went back some 300 times, not just once, not just twice, but 300 times back to the South to bring slaves out of the Deep South into freedom into the North. Harriet Beecher Stowe, I did correct it here. I had too many T's on Harriet in the handouts. I apologize. What did Harriet Beecher Stowe?
Uncle Tom's Cabin.
That's right, Uncle Tom's Cabin. Uncle Tom's Cabin. Rebecca Pennell. Well, the thing to remember about Dr. Pennell is Antioch College. She was the first U.S. professor, first female professor at Antioch College. She was born 1829. Antoinette, well, let me change the slide. That would help. I think I just went past the slide. Antoinette Brown Blackwell, first ordained women minister, 1853. A time when it was all males, black robes. Pretty interesting that she, along with others like Mrs. Eddy, were at essentially the forefront of religious endeavors. Ellen Gould White. She was an Adventist, and she wrote her seminal work, Steps to Christ. Okay. Olympia Brown. She graduated Antioch College in 1860. Julie Smith. She published a translation of the Bible. How many modern day, okay, we have the Holy Scripture. How many translations of the New Testament are there right now? Close to 1 million different translations of the New Testament. So Julie Smith was one of the first female biblical scholars to essentially write her translation. Clara Barton, well, this is an easy one. Founding of the American Red Cross. Yeah, founding of the American Red Cross. Elizabeth Cady Stanton. Has anyone heard of the Seneca Falls Convention of 1848? I was there. I just graduated from high school. I'm just kidding. I'm old, but I'm not that old. 1848, the Seneca Falls Convention, Seneca Falls, New York. Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and there were a number of good people working, male and female, but Elizabeth Cady Stanton is credited with essentially being the major driving force behind the first women's conference in 1848 in Seneca Falls, New York. Essentially, it was on and about women's rights. Ida Tarbell. Yes, she was a journalist, and she was a very interesting journalist for her time. She was what we would consider today in the 21st century to be an investigative reporter. And at the time, journalism was an all-male bastion, and we're talking yellow journalistic kinds of things, a lot of glitz, a lot of glamour. Not a lot of difference today in some respect. I digress. But in this particular case, Ida Tarbell was the leading edge of investigative reporting. Okay? She was also the Allegheny class of 1850. Okay? Now, we've taken a quick snapshot at the people. Let's take a look at some of the historical events. And again, I just mentioned the events of 1848, the Seneca Falls Conference. There were not only ladies there, but there were gentlemen there as well. Okay? 1854, the Massachusetts Married Women's Property Act. This was an attempt essentially to allow women to own property, because up until then, if a lady married a gentleman, at least I would hope he would be a gentleman, she relinquished her property to him and she owned nothing, absolutely nothing, okay? Mumble, mumble, grumble, mumble, grumble. I mean, you think about it. I mean, you think about the impact of that, you know. Who's going to outlast a man more or less, chronologically speaking? Probably a lady. Look at any church or synagogue. Predominantly ladies, older ladies are in it, okay? Now, I myself am 10 years older than my wife. Doesn't take brain surgery to figure out I'll probably pass on before she will, see? So it's important that she can conduct business and probate wills and, you know, those kinds of things. 1856, Mary Baker Eddy, the discoverer and founder of Christian Science, was bedridden for some 6 years. In 1866, she began her notes on Genesis and the Bible, and she is credited with, in 1866, the discovery of the religion and the system of metaphysical healing we now know as Christian Science in the year 1866. 1869, the territory, not a state, but the territory of Wyoming adopts women's suffrage. Now you're talking about being on the leading edge. You're not even a state yet, and you're out there kicking sand in everybody else's face. Very, very interesting timeline. Let's rocket forward just a little bit more here. 1870, Mary Baker Eddy begins teaching classes on Christian Science and maintains a healing practice. Are there people today still in the healing practice of Christian Science? Yes. Yes, there are. 1871, Massachusetts and Alabama, first United States, U.S. states to outlaw wife beating. Up until then, it was not a crime. Folks, I live out in the Texas Hill Country with the rednecks, halfway between Bernie and Sisterdale, a little bit of property. Some of the finest people in the world you ever want to meet out there. They'll do anything in the world for you. Need a spare 1,000 gallons of water? They got it. Need a spare case of rifle ammunition? They got that too. But, as in any community, we have our challenges out there in the Hill Country. We're not perfect, you know, as any community does. And even though it is illegal to beat one another, it unfortunately still happens. And that's one of the things that I think we all work with regards to understanding and rights and those kinds of things. One of the most atrocious things I saw, I'm standing at the head of my property. This was about 3 months ago. That's about right, 3 months ago. I'm at the head of my property at my gate, right at the turn. We're on the top of a hill. Right at the turn on the county road. As a truck goes past, a lady comes spilling out of the truck off the right-hand side. Husband just kicked the door open and pushed her out like that. So I looked at this and thought, okay, go out the gate. Ma'am, may I help you? And she's not too good shape. She says, no, sir, I don't want you to get involved. We have a spousal abuse problem now, don't we? I said, ma'am, my name's Robert Sarvis. My wife's Martha inside. Our boy's named Robbie. If you need anything, would you please come see us? She said, yes, sir, but I don't want you all to get involved. I said, ma'am, I am involved. Somebody kicked you out in front of my property. You're involved, I'm involved. What can I do to help? Oh, no, sir, I don't want you to get involved. May I call somebody for you? No, sir, please don't. How did I finish handling that one? Brought her in the house, got her some water, kind of got her settled down, and then eventually said, I need to get back home. May I drive you there, ma'am? No, I'll walk. They live about 3 miles back. You sure you want to walk 3 miles? Did I report it to somebody? I did. A good friend of mine is in law enforcement out there in Kendall County. I reported to the county sheriff. They knew about it. They know what's going on. They're trying to get it fixed. I don't know exactly what that means. But those kinds of incidents occur any and everywhere, right? Just one of those things. 1875, Mrs. Eddy publishes first edition of Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures, the textbook on Christian Science. In 1878, the Anthony Amendment is proposed. What's the Anthony Amendment? The Anthony Amendment was entered into Congress of the United States essentially to afford full rights to women, to ladies. Okay? It would have been an amendment to the United States Constitution. 1881, the American Red Cross is established, Clara Barton again. 1882, Women's National Press Association formed, back into the journalists and the journalism thing. 1887, the Senate defeats the Anthony Amendment. Not good. Who predominantly was in our United States Senate in those days? A bunch of ugly, old, smelly guys, yeah, see? So was it destined to failure? Well, maybe at first, but this is at least we're trying. At least we're trying to bring it forward. 1890, Wyoming becomes the first state where women can vote. So everybody moved to Wyoming, right? 1895, taking it forward just a little bit, Elizabeth Cady Stanton publishes the Women's Bible. In 1903, Ida Tarbell writes McClure's series exposing unfair business practices of Standard Oil Company. Remember, Mrs. Tarbell was the investigative journalist, okay? So she's still out there, still swinging it, right? 1910, everybody is familiar with this one, I'm sure, the first large suffrage parade in New York City. One, for those of us that deal in diversity and diversity issues, and diversity includes everyone, okay? Diversity kinds of research and issues includes everyone. The 1910 date is a watershed, landmark kind of a date, if you will. 1920, the 19th Amendment. Women win the right to vote. Women win the right to vote. So we need 100% of the women out there voting now, right? Okay. What do these people, and very remarkable people they are, what do they have in common? Risk takers, very good. What else? With all due respect, they didn't do it when they were 21 years young. Predominantly, they were chronologically more mature than that. That's translate older. Okay? And yet, what does our society give us? Youth, glitz, glamour, something else, right? That's what our society gives us. And yet, it's the more mature, more wise, more experienced individual that's out there pushing it along, making it happen. I'm not saying that you won't have the child prodigies, the 19, 20, 21-year-old double PhD, MD, whatever, doing unbelievable research kinds of things, but they're the anomaly. They're not the usual sort. It takes some level of experience to know when to take the risk, or maybe to experience something to the point that says, that's it, I've had enough. Thus far and no further, we're going to take it forward. Okay? What are some other things these fine folks have in common? Well, it's a term that's been beat way too many times and spoken too often, but truly they're outside the box thinkers. They're truly outside the box thinkers. They're not afraid to ask the question, what if? What if we just try? Wouldn't it be great if? Because they're there pushing it, making it happen, making it so. What do these remarkable events have in common? And what kind of impact do they have on us here at the dawn, or roughly at the dawn of the 21st century? Think about some of the seminal events we've just reviewed very quickly And think about the historical tie-in, and how does that impact what we do today, June the, can't remember the date, June the 6th in 2005, and how we take that forward.
You're talking about change, and they're looking at changes and wanting to make a change.
That's right. It's a change and change process and willing to make a change. Remember, there's only two constants in the future. One is ambiguity, the other one is change. Everyone needs to get comfortable with those two concepts. We don't know what the future holds. That's okay. But we can do some things now ourselves, with our colleagues, with our academic communities, with our civic community at large, meaning San Antonio, Bexar County, and surrounding counties. We can do some things to move forward with what we know, we understand to be the right ideas of where we want to be in the future. And then somebody says, I just want it the way it was. Not happening, as we like to say. Not happening. There's no way. You know, Wasp Creek up there in the hill country runs along the edge of my property. And I was telling our little boy, Robbie, 9 years old, soon to be 10, he is a true blessing, a true darling child, just like his mom. Telling Robbie, I said, you know, you can't walk through that stream the same way twice. You can't go through that stream. You can't go through that same stream. It's a different stream every time you put a foot in it. He goes, oh, yes it is. I said, no, honey. I said, you go from one side to the next, and it's not much wider than it is from me to you, so you can splash through it, okay? I said, splash through it and come back over. I said, it's a different stream every time you cross it. You've changed the stream, and the stream's changed you, because now he's getting water, you know, up to here, okay? And I said, and that's the way experiences are. That's the way education and learning is. That's the process of change, of understanding change and getting comfortable with change. Okay? Now, a rhetorical question, but one we should ponder. Is the vibrancy and beauty of youth of any real advantage? It depends. If you're, I'm sorry, go ahead. Well, it depends is a good answer, but also if you're marketing an idea, trying to sell an idea, what are the marketing pros going after? Oh yeah. Yeah, SEXX, that's right, they go for that one. Sure. But if we're talking about truly being change agents for the future, and if we're talking about providing a higher level of kindness, caring, understanding to our communities, and our communities of all of us, young and old. I think the idea behind that is that it's a process of understanding how those changes take effect. Example, my wonderful mother-in-law was out at the house yesterday. She's the only earthly parent I have left. Both my parents have passed on, and my wife's father has passed on. Mrs. Chamberlain is, I'm going to guess, 80 years young. I have no clue. She could be 120, she could be 37. I have no clue. She's one of these perennially vibrant, youthful ladies. She drives to Houston to visit her other daughter and son-in-law. She drives to Houston in 2.5 hours with 2 radar detectors and 3 CB radios and does 120 miles an hour and that kind of stuff, okay? The lady just doesn't know when to stop. She doesn't, she's just one of those kinds of folks. But she was kind of having a down bad day. Everybody has the right to have a bad day. And my wife picked right up on it. And so we did some things to kind of help her along and made sure, said, we keep a cane there at the house for her. So our house is a single story, there are no steps, but sometimes a walking stick is just what she needs. And I asked her, would you like to go outside in the back yard for a little bit and just kind of be outdoors and see what's going on? Beautiful blue sky out there yesterday and all. She says, no. She says, I think I better stay inside. Okay, fine. But the idea behind that is that, you've got to have consideration. Yet there's days, myself included, when I'm not doing quite so well. And it's all I can do to go outside and change the water in the dog's water bowl. And of course, it was ever so slightly exciting at my place yesterday. I killed a coral snake in our backyard. You know about a coral, don't you? Yeah. Yeah, I dare say they're deadly. Like, we killed it with a stick. Didn't have time to get to the shotgun, so we killed it with a stick. But if it had hit one of us, and my little boy was with me, I wouldn't have made it to the house. And I was about 30 yards from the house. So that's okay. It happens. Rattlers and corals out there are very, very infrequent. We don't see a lot of them. Mostly scorpions, white-tailed deer. Got a good crop of white-tailed deer for the fall, no doubt about it. But the point is, maybe that vibrancy and the beauty and the youth and those kinds of things, while certainly they're pleasant to look at, an individual with experience is never at the mercy to an individual with a theory, okay? I'll always go with the experience. Yes, ma'am?
That question brings to mind something, it's not an original thought, but it has been said, you know, my goal is to die young as late as possible. There's nothing wrong with being vibrant.
That's right.
You can be vibrant, you can be youthful, you can be beautiful long past what the age might determine.
That's right, because the question is, what is inherent beauty? Where is that beauty? This is one of the most beautiful individuals I've ever seen in my life. I don't know who the lady is, but I love her unconditionally. Just as I love every one of y'all unconditionally. I'm not talking husband-wife love. Come on here. Okay? And that's when we start getting at a touch of that inherent beauty and wisdom and kindness and understanding. And it's those kinds of leading edge thoughts that are going to take us well into the 21st century. What's the average lifespan now of somebody being born today? I don't even know anymore. It's way out there somewhere.
81 for women and 75 for men.
Think I'll sit down on that one? Point being that it is conceivable that some individuals being born today could well live to see the dawn of the 22nd century. And so, in some respects, we're going to have a lot of experience, a lot of wisdom there that we need to figure out a way to tap into. Okay? When does one acquire wisdom and intelligence?
Sometimes never.
It's a good answer. Sometimes never. And I got a brother-in-law like that. But anyway, don't go there. Sometimes never. Yeah, sometimes never. Sometimes it just never clicks. They just never get it together, you know. But that wisdom and understanding, you know, and intelligence, you know. What is real intelligence? Anybody thought about that? Where does our real intelligence come from? Where does our intelligence and insight for any one of us come from? Ooh, this is getting awfully philosophical. But I think these are issues that we need to consider when we're dealing with others, whether they're our own age group or much, much younger or much, much more chronologically mature. I try not to say older. But I think it's important that we consider these ideas. Your questions, your comments. Yes, ma'am.
When you were talking about youth and beauty, I make this comment to my sister all the time. I want to live forever. And she just beats me down every time. Why do you want to do that for? You're not supposed to. Well, she's 65 and I guess she's getting that age. But I just, you know, you want to live forever. The reality may not be there, of course. May not, but is not there. But it's just, you just want to feel forever. You don't want to go through life sitting down. And I think that's part of that those whole two ideas of what is youth and what is wisdom. You have to know, what you can and cannot do, and still be able to do it. Does that make any sense?
It does. She's alluding to the issues and around those family members, as loving as they are, who try to beat us down. I think, to be honest, I think one of the travesties of what goes on is we label people, young, old, black, white, fat. I think one of the travesties we do to ourselves is we record ages. Does it really matter how old we are? Yeah. Somebody the other day asked me, "How old are you?" I said 347. He says, "No." I said, "Okay, 17." Does it really matter? Not really. In the overall scheme of things, no. If you think about it, it really doesn't matter. Because what we've decided that time has been man-made anyway. I mean, we've defined what an international second is, and it's so many pings on something or other, kind of a isotope scope thingy of, I don't remember that stuff. So who cares? We could have used it how long it takes me to boil pasta, and it would have been just as significant, right? I mean, so I think you've got a good point. The trick, though, I guess I would say, in dealing with family members is, of course, to be loving at all times. And recognize, are we physically going to live forever? Probably not. Though I'm planning to live to 100. I don't know about you guys. But do we spiritually live forever? That's the question to ask. Do we spiritually live forever? Other comments? Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Where do you think we went wrong then, that our society today basically neglects the wisdom and the intelligence of our elder population, and you see on television
Young youth,
when, right.
you know.
When and where? I mean, 50s, 1950s?
Yes, I think about the 1950s, late 1940s, 1950s, with the advent and the standardization, and I'm not just blaming one thing here, but television and popular media has a lot to do with it. When we standardize the carrier signals of our commercial television stations, said, okay boys, if you're going to transmit TV, it's got to be this one so everybody can receive it equally. Because up until then, they were proprietary. You had to buy a special TV just for that station, okay? And then all of a sudden that got into this business of sponsors and advertising and those kinds of things. And we kind of got the cart before the horse, it seems, you know. Do people respect youth like we're supposed to respect youth? In some respects, no. The elders lean on the youth, and you're just a punk kid, you don't know nothing, kind of an attitude. And yet there are some cultures in our world today where if a more mature person comes to me, I address him or her as grandfather or grandmother, even though they're not my biological grandmother or grandfather. China is an example of that. That's very, very common there and still is. And it's not untoward for them to have 3 or 4 generations living in one house, one home. And yet, what do? Older person gets kind of down, ship them off somewhere, because we can't handle them. You know, we're both here and there and yon, and so in some respects, it's a big issue. But I think that's a lot of it is the popular media. When we moved out to Kendall County a year and a half ago, I did not reconnect any of the satellite receivers, put up the satellite dish, nor connect commercial television. And we've seen, at least my wife and I think we're seeing an improvement in our own behaviors and in our boys' behavior. And Robbie likes now to read. He's rediscovered something called books. Imagine that. We've got internet access via direct wave satellite, okay? And I've got my ham radio and shortwave hobby. I can talk to the other side of the world if I want to. So we're not incommunicado. It's just that we're choosing the type of information that we're receiving, being more active filters. We've got internet access, of course, and that's a whole different kettle of fish. Where did we ultimately go wrong? I'm not sure really if we've really gone wrong. We may still be going wrong and not know it. That's what bothers me the most. In counseling, we talk about spirals. You start your day, you're running late. You missed your coffee, didn't get breakfast. You got into the car, it's starting to rain. The traffic gets worse, and all of a sudden there's a wreck. And then you're going to be late to the office, your cell phone battery died, you can't call the office, you're spiraling down, down, down. A negative spiral. And next thing you know, you're lower than a rattlesnake's belly on the floor. Whereas a positive spiral, yeah, you got up just about on time, but you got that quick coffee and a piece of toast and maybe a half an old piece of bacon from something, but you're on the upward spiral. You climb in the car, everything works, you're on the way, you got to the office almost on time, but close enough, and you spiral up, up, up. And that's the problem. I can't sense if society is on a downward spiral or if we're on an upward spiral. I don't know that I've got the young lady back there went one of these. We may very well be on a sinusoidal kind of a response rather than a spiraling response. This is the kind of stuff that drives psychologists, sociologists crazy. We ask these kinds of questions. And those of us in education ask that because of the population and the audience that we deal with, the students that we deal with, the participants in our classes. I can look at a class of people and know, well, boy, today's going to be a hoot and holler because they've had another wonderful filled morning already, and they don't need me leaning on them. So.
I agree with you about the TV. I raised my son without a TV, and this lady, I was torturing my son. She literally called me, I can't stand it, Mom, I'm sending you a TV. I was living going to school in San Francisco. She sends me a TV on the bus. She just thought it was torture.
Not to have a television.
She did not grow up with a TV, so she didn't understand my philosophy and not, it's okay to have a TV, but don't raise your children. To this day, my son does not rely on the TV, which is wonderful when he goes to visit friends and the TV's always on.
I know.
And it does change. He does want to read a book.
You can be selective. The trick is having the mental discipline to be selective. Now, we watch videos, we watch CDs and those kinds of things. We've got 2 televisions but that's us choosing what we want to watch. And okay, we want to watch a movie tonight after dinner, great. What do we want to watch? We're going to turn it on, we're going to watch the movie My Fair Lady, then we're going to turn it off. We'll watch Rex Harrison sing through an entire 3-hour movie, right? And so, but then that's it. But if it's school night, no. Homework first, and then we'll see. And I don't want to be, a son of a gun about it, but it's important, I think, that we remind that. Yes, ma'am, remember that.
There's a saying in Spanish I wanted to share that some of you may know, but it's no más sabe el diablo por diablo que por viejo. No sabe el diablo por viejo que por diablo, which is basically the devil knows more because he's old, not because he's the devil.
It's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Well, I know we're a little early on time, but we can continue the discussion. I glare of the light. I think I'm supposed to go to about 11 or so and then maybe break for questions. But other questions, other comments?
Who do you see today as a woman? I was watching the TV last night. And they were talking about who do they, Amy asked me a question, who do you believe would be the most influential or important person of the second half of the 2nd century? So in terms of women, who would you select? I mean, they had someone like Hillary, and then they had, it must have been the husband, because they talked about Eleanor Roosevelt, but
Yes.
She was fascinating for her time.
She was also well ahead of her time, Mrs. Roosevelt. I would put Mrs. Clinton there at the forefront.
It's amazing so many people dislike her, but why?
Well, but you know,
Because she does so much.
I've never met Mrs. Clinton, so I'm not sure that I like her or not. But I can respect what the lady is trying to do, what she's trying to accomplish, and I think that's important. Many times we get personality in the way. Well, I'm not going to talk to him because I don't like the way he does it. Well, you've let personality get in the way, but maybe the chap's got some great ideas. Take a minute and listen to what he says, or listen to what she says. Who knows? She might have a better idea than you do, okay? So in many respects, I think that's important to remember. Take the time to understand. It seems to me, a lot of our world problems right now lie in the fact that we have a gross misunderstanding. We've created multiple languages and multiple ways not to speak to one another, and now we've got issues and concerns over religiosity, and they don't believe like we believe, and all of this angst and anxiety and those kinds of things. We can all get together. We can all get along with one another. You know, I'm asked the question ever so often here at the Health Science Center by those that I've gotten to know a little bit greater intimacy, I guess. You know, what are you doing here at the Health Science Center? Well, number one, I'm excited about what we're doing here at the Health Science Center and all of our avenues of research and education. I enjoy what I do, working in human resources on the teaching training side, and they let me come over to the good side on the academic side and work as well, and part-time teach in other venues. So I appreciate that. They allow me to continue my research, and I'm hoping that a lot of what I'm doing with the research that I do with the Texas Diversity Institute and those kinds of fine folks, I think is important. I think that's where we need to be as a society in the future. I think that's going to be, in my opinion, that's the saving grace for what lies ahead.
What do they do and what is their...
The Texas Diversity Institute, the Texas Diversity Council, essentially is to raise the level of awareness in our society with regards to issues in and around diversity and people. And it isn't just a black, white, Hispanic, non-Hispanic, white, male, female kind of issue anymore. It's much, much broader than that. One of the first things I figured out at the conference when I diddy-bop down there at the Marriott River Center, I found out right away that it was a major... Met two gentlemen, very, very fine gentlemen, that worked for a little company by the name of IBM. You might have heard of the company. 40,000 employees worldwide, I think. And we talked a little bit and had a great deal of interest in common. Not surprising, because in and around diversity, that kind of what brought a cross-section and interdisciplinary team of what we call ourselves diversity practitioners, if you will. And we're talking back and forth about what their company's doing. Of course, IBM has got, you know, infinite resources compared to what we have for things, right? I mean, they can just spend $1 million on something and not have to justify it to anybody, hardly. Whereas here, you know, $5 to go across campus is a major deal. You know, it takes bureaucrats forever to process that one. But you know, I could see where the gentlemen were going with us with these ideas. And then we did the card swap thing. Okay. And I looked at his card. Oh, okay, fine. And after about an hour of talking with these two fine gentlemen, it finally dawned on me. They're both active in the GLBT initiatives. Anybody know what GLBT stands for? Gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgendered. That one had completely didn't even appear on my radar screen. Because as a heterosexual male, married, I don't understand that, okay? But I'm willing to sit and talk and listen and try to understand where these gentlemen are coming from. And I never thought of it in the realm of diversity. That completely fell off the radar screen for me. And I do, as you all know, a course, or maybe you don't know, you should know, my fault for not knowing. I do a class on diversity, that's called Valuing Diversity, okay? And it never hit the radar screen, never hit the radar screen. That was on Monday. On Tuesday of the conference, I met the lesbians, okay? And it was LGBT, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgendered on their cards, okay? So, okay, folks, look, I need to get you two, and we need to sit down and talk because I'm all confused. You know, so whether you agree or disagree with the lifestyle is not the issue. That's not the point. The point is we have to understand where they're coming from, or try to understand as best we can.
Do you think San Antonio, there's hope for San Antonio? People, I feel like that I hear that we are very accepting because we have a different culture than most cities. There's so predominantly Latin and then Mexican. But I came, like I said, before I went to school in San Francisco, I was there for 25 years, and talk about diversity. Out of the 100 girls in my class, I went to an all-girl Catholic school. There were probably not one the same country. So Salvadorian, Cuban, Nicaraguan, Colombian, Puerto Rican, Costa Rica, England, Ireland, a lot of Irish. So the diversity, you couldn't help but accept people because there wasn't another Mexican.
That's right.
Everybody, but I'm wondering if people here understand what diversity really, really means.
I'm not sure that they do yet, but I'm not sure that that's unique to just San Antonio, because I'm not sure that New York City understands it, or Philadelphia understands it, or Austin, Texas understands it, or whatever. I heard it said one time that Houston, Texas is a small New York City, and Dallas, Texas is a small Chicago, and San Antonio is nothing more than a big Catula. And in many respects, that's the case. We're still a small town kind of city with that kind of mentality, and there's nothing wrong with that. Yet we've kind of grown, and we've grown so large, so big, so fast that we're struggling socioeconomically with a lot of the challenges, and that's what's driving all of our city administrators nutsoid, trying to keep all this stuff in balance.
So how is I'm sorry,
That's quite all right.
How is the organization trying to make the city aware, keep the awareness? How are they doing it?
Well, the Texas Diversity Council has councils in San Antonio, Houston, Austin, and Dallas, just the four. It's the only places we've gotten started so far. There's a lot more work to be done. This conference we had a month ago was our first annual conference. Nowhere else had anybody ever thought of bringing all of these people together. And we had people from all over the United States. And it was absolutely fascinating to watch. So we've got a ways to go yet, it seems to me. And it includes, essentially, it's an inclusive kind of environment across youngs, olds, everybody, including, and not to hit this one too hard, but even the non-religious, the irreligious, and the religious. We got into some discussions across those lines as well. That's an interesting one, because there is diversity within the concept of the religion type of thing. Because there are those that say, no, I'm not going to go there, and there's others, yeah, we need to go there. And so we've not yet come within within the community of those of us that do diversity initiatives and diversity training, we've not come to grips with that. And I think that's one that needs to be considered. What with your patients, with your own patients, what level of religious understanding goes into your healing efforts, if at all? The philosophical question is, should it? Be careful how you answer. It's not an absolute question, nor is it an absolute answer. I think Harvard Medical School continues to have annual symposia when they're talking about spirituality and healing and the tie-in between the two. So I think that's a concern. I think we're going to see a blending of that and maybe a progress in some respects. I don't know. Well, my time is about up. I do want to thank you for your attention today. a lively group and some good discussion. I'll be around for a few moments. I think I'm supposed to actually stop here and break for questions. So I'll be around for another 5 or 10 minutes and then skedaddle back to the office and try to keep exciting things from happening for the rest of the day. Thank you. It's the way it is in HR, right? So it's exciting to be here. Thank you for your attention today.